Hello everyone, my name is Eftita Susarani. I'm doing this video to accomplish my assignment, Morphology and Syntax. In this video, I will try to define about what a phrase is. Some of the example I use will be taken from my mother tongue. It's Bahasa Jawi. There are 7 phrases that we know very common in English. One of them is noun phrase. What is a noun? We will define what a phrase is first. A phrase is a bunch of words or a group of words that work together, and it doesn't contain subject and predicate. In other words, it does not contain verb or a phrase has its own function. It can function as a subject, it can function as an object or a complement. It also can function as a predicate. A phrase can also function as subject, object, or prepositional object. The example of how to spot as a subject is the father. In this example, is the fathers of waters is the Mississippi River. If we want to spot it whether it is the phrase or no, we can refer it. We can replace it with prepositional it. And the second, another example is my neighbor down the street baked me a pie. My neighbor down the street, we can replace it with pronoun he, she, or a noun like Carly, John, or something. Baked me a pie. If it works, it does fit the flow of a sentence. It is a phrase. It doesn't contain a verb. It doesn't contain a verb. It doesn't contain a subject. It is a phrase. In Bahasa Jawa, in my mother tongue, there are huge difference to determine a phrase. To define a phrase, we need to spot where is the head of a phrase. The head is the noun of a phrase. The example is, for simple examples is worn out furnitures. Worn out furnitures. Worn out is the adjective and furnitures is the head. In my language, in Japanese, it's the other way around. So the head go first. I will translate the worn out furniture as perabot yang sudah lama. Alright. The first phrase that I will explain is noun phrase. Noun phrase basically act like a noun. It does have function. The function can be a subject, can be an object, and can be a prepositional object. When noun phrase can consist of person, place, or thing plus modifier, then we form a noun phrase. I will give an example when a phrase uses a subject. The father of waters is the Mississippi River. The father of waters, when we can substitute it with it, and it does fit the flow, it is a phrase. Another example is, my neighbor down the street baked me a pie. My neighbor down the street, we can replace it with a pronoun such as he, she, or a noun like Carly, John. I try to replace it. My neighbor down the street, I will express it with he. He baked me a pie. It does fit, so it is a noun phrase. As an object, Jasmine baked a chocolate cake. A chocolate cake is a noun phrase, but it functions as an object. Second example, Rico replaced the worn-out furniture. The worn-out furniture can be replaced with it, so it is a phrase. Another example is prepositional object. Michael saw the girls in brown. The girl in brown is the object for these sentences. An example in my language, in Bahasa Jawa, in my mother tongue, there are basic differences. In English, a phrasal noun will consist of head as the noun, and plus modifiers or determiners. It very different with Japanese. In my Japanese, it was the head first. The head first being written, and then the modifiers. For example, in English, we can say a chocolate cake. A chocolate cake. The cake is the head, and the chocolate modifies the cake. Explain the cake. In Japanese, it was the opposite. The head goes first, and then the modifiers comes later. I will translate it, the chocolate cake, into Japanese, and is kue chocolate. Yes, or in my Japanese is jajan chocolate or kue chocolate. Kue means cake, chocolate means chocolate. Another example is worn-out furniture. Furniture is the head, and worn-out is the adjective that explains the furniture. In my Japanese, in my language, it will be furniture. I will translate furniture as parapot. Worn-out in Japanese is kuno. Parapot, kuno. So the head comes first, and then the modifiers comes later. The second second common phrase is verb phrase, or some call it the verbals. The verb phrase is a group of words used as a verb. It acts like a verb in a sentence. It contains the verb and a direct or indirect object, or a verb plus dependent object, or dependent complements, or dependent modifiers. For example, is a fat man put the money quickly into the box. Put the money quickly into the box is the verb phrase. Put here is include the verb phrase, or even in traditional grammar, in English traditional grammar, a phrasal verb considers as predicate. Verb phrase For example, is he is running toward the bus. Running toward the bus is a phrasal verb. Toward the bus is complement. Running is the verb. He is running quickly toward the verbs. He is running quickly toward the bus. Running quickly here is an adverb that explains running. In my language, in Japanese, we hardly know a word with gender. In preposition, we know he, she, it's it. It's very hard to find the reference for that word in Japanese, since we don't know gender for our to point out a subject. It usually goes with the name of the noun, like the man. I will translate it. Wong iku means the man, or wong wedok itu means the woman. Wedok means female in English. So there are words that has no reference in my language. In my language will be wong gendut iku ngelebokno duit cepet-cepetan nang kotak. The next phrase is the verb phrase as gerund. We can spot gerund easily by the form verb plus ing, not to be confused with with continuous tense, because continuous tense always being attached with, being followed with the word to be, smr. This gerund is different. A gerund is a verb form that functions as a noun. In sentence, it can be subject, object, or subject complement. Gerund can be easily spotted by replacing it with a pronoun, since it acts like a noun. So we can replace it by the pronouns it. The example is skiing is my favorite sport. We can replace skiing with it, and it does fit the flow. It is my favorite sport. Compared to my language, my mother tongue, we don't know any reference to this kind of form. In our language, we don't recognize what a tense is, so there is no reference to tenses. We add the next form is gerund. A gerund is a verb form that functions as a noun. We can spot a gerund easily by the verb plus ing form, but not to be confused with continuous tense. Continuous tense is always followed by to be, smr, or participle. We will explain it later why gerund is different. In sentence, it can be subject, object, or subject complements. It can be easily spotted. A gerund can be easily spotted in a sentence by replacing it by a pronoun like it. The example is skiing is my favorite sport. Skiing, I will replace it with it. It is my favorite sport. It does fit the flow, so it is a gerund. refer it to my language in Japanese. In my language, we don't recognize anything like tenses. There's nothing like the word tenses in my language. For example, mangan means eat, Melayu means run, turu means sleep, nulis means sleep. It will not change anytime we use it in any condition, in any time that we want to show it. If you want to show when an action happened, we just simply add it with some adverbial time. So there is nothing that this ing form is only well known in English. So in Japanese we don't use this term. Skiing is my favorite sport. If I translate it in my language, it will be ski. Olahraga kesenanganku. Even olahraga is not my original language. It was borrowed into my mother tongue, so I can hardly find the reference to. And the next is infinitive. The infinitive can be used as noun, as adjectives, as adverb. The sign is almost, the verb always almost begin with to. The example is to love unconditionally is the selfless thing. To love here is not a verb. To love here work as infinitive. We can replace it with it because it works like a noun. It unconditionally selfless thing. It does it. And the second is you need to study for your finals exam if you want to get a good grade. Here, to study and to get is include infinitive. The next phrase is participle phrase. It looks like a verb, but the function is an adjective. Participle phrases modify the noun in the same sentence. The example is, wagging her tail, my puppy greets me at the door. Wagging the tail is a participle phrase. And second is, sitting in the junk drawer, my glasses were pushed toward the back. Sitting in the junk of drawer explain my glasses. This is a participle phrase. Not to get mixed up with the gerund. How to distinct it? The example will be, wagging her tail, comma, my puppy greets me at the door. This is a participle. We can't replace it with it. It will not fit the flow. It would not make sense. This is participle. Different with gerund. A gerund will be, wagging her tail is my puppy's way of showing affection. So it's kind of define something, and we can replace the wagging her tail with a preposition it. That means if it can be replaced with it means gerund. And when we use participle, it usually use comma. It refers to my language. This method is not it is not common. We don't use this sort of kind of form. It's always the subject first. The subject would be, if I translate it into my language, will be anake asuku. Oh. In my language, we hardly find this kind of form. We always use the subject first. We hardly having this kind of form, this method. It would not fit the flow in my language. It's always the subject first, and then followed with predicate, and then the object. This hierarchy order is most likely to happen. There are times that we will reduce a word and it does make sense, it does complete the sentence. But to use this kind of form is I hardly ever read this kind of form, this kind of method. So we don't use participle form either. The next phrase is a positive phrase. It's a noun or noun phrase that gives another name to the noun right next to it. For example, my puppy, a Maltese and a Havanese mix, is gentle and smart. This a Maltese and Havanese mix shows the origin or breed of types of dog. The class or the species, a certain species of dog it mixed, is the positive phrase, showing the positive phrase. It usually follows the word it explains or identifies. The next is prepositional phrase. It modifying phrase consisting of the preposition and its subject. Act as adjective or adverb. The example is Jessie is inside the store. Inside the store is as a verb complement for is. Jessie is the girl with the blue eyes. With the blue eyes is act like an adjective that explains the girl. I will give you a call in the morning. In the morning is the prepositional phrase and acts as an adverb. I can translate it in my Japanese like Jessie ing jerone toko. Inside can refers to ing in my language. Jessie is the girl with the blue eyes. Jessie arep wedok sing mripate biru. We don't use with, we refer it as sing. Sing means when refers in and just can be referred as the. I will give you a call in the morning. Aku kate nelpon awakmu pas isuk. There's some adjustment here. Aku kate telepon awakmu isuk. We don't recognize this kind of splitting words in phrase that we know a phrase that can be separated by a noun, like give a call, and we can put you in the middle. In Japanese, there's nothing like this. We don't recognize something like this in Japanese. The last phrase is absolute phrase. What is an absolute phrase? It modifies the independent clause, not connected by a conjunction, set off with a comma, could be removed without affecting the meaning of the sentence. The example would be, his feet sore, he continued his hike. His feet show could be removed and still it makes a complete sentence that makes sense. He continued his hike. The second is, the baby ate the applesauce with pleasure, cooing and gurgling as he took each spoonful. This cooing and gurgling, etc. can be removed, and the main sentence still does make sense. The baby ate the applesauce with pleasure. It still does make sense. It's a complete sentence. In my language, in my mother tongue, in Japanese, yes, we know this sort of kind of method. Yes, something we omit a certain part in a conversation especially, and still we understand, we can understand as the conversation is still going on. Yes, there are times that we remove some part of speech if the opposite of conversation is Japanese. Yes, he or she will understand. And thank you. That is my video. I hope I'm not an expert. There are always some mistakes. I'm still learning too, but thank you.